All right. Why, hello, and welcome to issue 577 of Geek in the City Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron Duran.
I'm one of your other hosts, Beanarita.
I am your other host, Cable Hashtani.
And we are joined by our special guest, David F. Walker, who gave that face when I said 577 of like, really, dude, you need a better hobby.
Wow, I'm impressed. I was expecting to say like episode 57 or something, but then that's ridiculous because I know you've been doing it a while. So
I've been on this mic for almost 16 years.
My hat is off to you. I don't think I've done anything with any regularity for that long.
You've been writing that long?
Okay, sure. I've been procrastinating that long. How about that? That's more like it. I was expecting to say like.
I don't know what that was.
Ooh, there was some feedback there. It's freaking me out.
Sorry, that's me trying to get to our YouTube chat.
Oh, oh yeah, good idea.
For whatever reason, it didn't start on mute.
That's all right. So, David, what you been up to?
Oh, I'm going
other than not showering, apparently.
Partying every day. I rock and roll all night and party every day.
Just you and Gene Simmons.
Yeah. No, I've just been, I'd like to say that I'm that person who's been making the most of his time in quarantine, but I would be lying to you. So,
well, all right. I'm going to call you out on that one because I don't know how fair that is. First off, you've got the Anarchist Jurisdiction, which you successfully kickstarted the shit out of.
Yeah, that's true.
You've got the history of the Black Panther Party coming out in January as a graphic novel. And, you've got a TV show coming out. So, yeah, that exactly sounds like someone who's been slacking off.
You sound like my shrink when you say that sort of stuff. No, I honestly, I've been trying to keep busy. And I think that it's interesting because I spent probably the first 4 or 5 months of the pandemic and this quarantining really with this attitude of like, well, everybody's going through this and we're all going through this together sort of thing, as if we were all experiencing it in this monolithic block the same way, trying to sort of diminish whatever it was that I was feeling. And it wasn't until I had a conversation with a friend of mine who was like, man, the pandemic's the best thing that ever happened to me. It's, I got laid off from my job. I've been collecting unemployment. And I was like, what? And that was sort of like the wake up call that I needed. And I started turning things around in terms of like my own productivity. And so I've been working on a lot of different projects, but there's been very few that I finished. And so the Kickstarter thing that you mentioned, the Anarchist Jurisdiction book joke thing that I did is one of the few things that I actually successfully did. And it was a huge goof. It wasn't meant to be a real thing, So
you think it's because you didn't take it seriously, therefore you didn't put any pressure on yourself?
Yeah, no, I think that was a huge part of it. And what I learned in doing it was that it was it was really therapeutic. And I know a lot of people who've allowed this time to like, they don't have the energy to do what they normally would do. Mm-hmm. And so they've just stopped doing anything creative. And they're the ones I know who are in the most trouble. And I've always tried to do something, even if it's like as goofy as like making my own porn, which I didn't do. So I just joking.
All right. I don't know. We're going to kickstart that one.
I don't think you put that on Kickstarter.
I was going to say, yeah, what do you put that on? Isn't that Stroke Starter, I think, is what that's on.
There's there's a platform waiting to happen there.
Yeah. But you got to act fast because apparently Visa and MasterCard will quit supporting it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, good to know.
That was the conversation you walked in on.
I'm going to leave it up to you. I'm going to leave it up to you to start the Kickstarter of porn.
I feel like we're sort of missing the forest for the trees here. We're talking about all these different platform ideas, but then, we got to worry about whether or not financial institutions will support it, like Pornhub or, the cannabis industry. We should just go straight to the top and just start our own money.
Oh, there you go. I like that.
True.
Just start our own money.
So I'll tell you, this is
technically not illegal either.
Yeah, that's how Bitcoin exists, right? It's just someone's like, I'm going to make my own.
I had a situation the other day. I probably shouldn't admit to this, but I will. So I, from doing conventions for comic conventions for so long, a lot of people tend to deal in cash, and so I've always kept a fair amount of cash on hand, and I've always used it for everything from like putting gas in the car to buying coffee. It's been, when I go out to lunch or whatever, the cash is usually what I use. Well, I haven't done that in coming up on a year, right? So all this cash is sitting around, and the handful of places I seem to go on a regular basis aren't accepting cash anymore.
Right.
And so the only place I go to with any regularity that was 100% cash only was the dispensary. And I went there the other day, and now they take plastic. And I was like the good thing about going to dispensary with cash in your pocket is I don't go in with that much, so I never leave with that much, right? But now that they take plastic, I can sit there and go, okay, wait a sec, do I want to, try this, try that, or the other? So I feel like, the days of cash are quickly going away, and it's just I think I'm just old school enough that I like paying with cash. I like the feeling of having a big fat wad in my pocket and pulling it out and
unfurling it.
Yeah. So,
but you're right that has been an unforeseen casualty of COVID-19.
Yep.
Is that places don't want to take cash.
Yeah.
And the places that do take cash are experiencing a change shortage.
Yeah. No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like it is all we can do to get like 5 rolls of quarters for Guardian games.
Yeah.
On even on a weekly basis.
It's crazy to me too, because I also am one of those people who, from using cash so often, or having it on hand, I also have a ridiculous amount of change. I went somewhere the other day, and I can't even remember, because I don't remember what day it was, but I got a dime back, and it was just like, oh yeah, and I threw the dime in with whatever else, and there's so much stuff that we have to get used to, and then you know what the beauty is? It's all going to change. Like by the time I'm used to it, it'll all be it's a very interesting time that we're living in.
I like how it took the pandemic to make people think that cash was dirty.
Oh, I always thought it was. I watched.
Never worked at a bank.
I know.
I watch it.
So,
I do too.
I was going to say, I know why there's a change shortage. It's because little old ladies aren't leaving their house to pay for things with their, with whatever's in their coin purse.
A little pincher.
That's where all the coins go. Little old ladies have them, and then they aren't shopping with it because they're stuck at home.
Oh, and it's David Walker too. What one of the hardest things for me to adjust to was, I had a daily routine, and I would, every morning I would get up, didn't matter what the weather was like, and I would go for a walk, and I would go to one of 2 or 3 plaid pantries that are sort of triangulated in the middle of them, and I would get a cup of coffee. Like I proudly drank plaid pantry coffee, and this has been a regular routine. And I decided, when the pandemic started, okay, I better stop. And so I actually bought like one of those coffee makers. It only makes a cup at a time, because I don't drink a lot of coffee. And for one thing, plaid pantry coffee is just plain delicious. It's one of the things I miss the most. And it's just kind of, it's interesting to me, because again, that's one of those things where it's like, it's what, like $1.25, $1.50 for a cup of coffee, but you go, say you even only go 5-6 times a week. That's what is it? That's 3, 6, that's 9. And we'll say $10 a week.
You're dropping $10. That's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's not bad. But what happens when you don't go? That's $10 that you still have. It's also, I was thinking about this the other day, because I actually filled up my gas tank, I drive a hybrid, so I don't fill it up that often anyway. But I honestly was like, I think the last time I put gas in my car was during the wildfires when I was like worried I might have to evacuate, you know. And it's like,
God, I remember doing that. Jen was like, let's top them all off, make sure we're ready to go.
Yeah.
The other good thing about going to Plaid is they have those little skull coffee things too. So you can give yourself that next to all the creamers, they have that little tiny little black shot of caffeine.
Yeah.
You know.
And to me, it wasn't even about the caffeine. You know, part of it was just I needed the I needed that motivation to get up and go for a walk every day, just to get out, to get that little bit of exercise, and because I'm not a huge coffee drinker, it's not, and so I'm not like, you know, I don't mind getting coffee at a gas station. You know, it's like it's
about the ritual.
It is. It was about the ritual, and that's, I would say that of all. There's a whole lot of rituals that, you know, I think for every single one of us that we've had to give up on in one capacity or another. And it's weird, especially every time we, like, something comes up, like Christmas is coming up right now. Right. You know, and it's like, I, as much as I can't stand Christmas shopping, there's always at least one day I would have to go to the mall to buy something, or there's always, you know, this, that, or the other. And it's like, oh yeah, no, I don't have to do any of that shit now. So it's not the worst, but it's also, it takes a lot of adjusting to get used to. And unfortunately, like I said, I think we're going to, there's some things we that will change. I mean, again, really rapidly. I think the vaccine will change certain things, but then, you know, I kind of enjoy being a recluse. I kind of, part of me enjoys forgetting how long it's been since I took a shower or, you know, anything like that.
Well, I think the good news about that is we're still all going to be quarantining and being reclusive and distancing ourselves and wearing masks for at least another year.
Yes.
Even with the vaccine.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah. Which is the part that people are like, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear everything's going to be fine. Like, everything is not going to be fine.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's and it's just, I mean, I don't know how, like, all three of you are, you know, you're part of that, the nerd culture of Portland. And so when I logged in and I saw all of your faces, I was like, oh wow, I haven't seen any of you in close to a year, if not more. And wherever it was that I last saw you all three, was had to be something related to nerdism, right?
I mean, some like comic release or something. We all run into each other.
Yeah. And I'm honestly thinking it might have been Rose City Comic Con last year, where I saw, that might have been it, which is because the other thing,
I think you're right.
Yeah. 2019. Yeah.
When you stop and think about it, like in terms of comic conventions and stuff like that, that season ends usually around October. New York Comic Con is the last big convention, and then the first big convention is Emerald City. And so you know, I think about it, like, for me, the last trip that I took, the last business trip down to LA that I took was in early February. I've been to New York in mid-January. And so to me, it feels like, well, everything shut down for me the moment I got back from that last trip to LA, because it was like, I was supposed to go to Emerald City. I was supposed to go to WonderCon. I think there was something like 10 conventions that I was supposed to go to that all got canceled, and I was, you know, supposed to do my first book tour in Europe, and that got canceled, and yeah, you know, but I'm alive. I guess that's the good thing, and I'm still good looking.
That's right.
This is also true.
Yes. Well, I mean, speaking of, like, you know, conventions and book tours, let's kick off really quick. What got you started on writing the Black Panther graphic novel? The history of the Black Panther. I don't want people to think you're writing. T'Challa.
Yeah, no, I definitely.
You're not writing T'Challa.
No, not at all. Don't have any interest in that either. Well, I wrote a book on the life of Frederick Douglass for 10 Speed Press, and that book came out in I can't even remember now, 2019 or 2018. anyway, the point is when I was working on that book, I had mentioned to the editor that I was working with at the time that I was interested in doing something related to the Black Panther Party. And it was more of a casual sort of thing, you know, like, oh, do you have any dream projects? And then, so the Frederick Douglass came out in 2018. And so I would have mentioned this to Patrick sometime in 2017. And shortly after Frederick Douglass came out, we were talking about, you know, what a follow-up book would be. And he said, you know, would you be interested in doing the history of the Black Panther Party? And I was like, hell yeah, you know, because it's a subject that I've always been very interested in. And I foolishly thought that I knew more than I did. So I thought it was going to be an easier project to tackle than Frederick Douglass, because if nothing else, the Black Panther Party's history unfolded during the 20th century when mass media was up and running at its, you know, in pretty peak optimal performance. And turns out I was really wrong, incredibly stupid, made a lot of mistakes, but yeah, so that's how the book came together. And it was actually really quickly, in part just because I had done the, you know, 10-speed press knew me, they knew what I was capable of. And they knew that they were interested in doing this particular project. And so in that regard, it all came together very quickly. The research and the writing was absolutely brutal. And I finished writing it summer of 2019, probably like June or July. And the artist, he had already started working on it. He was pretty well into it by the time I'd wrapped up and the script had been approved. And then he finished drawing it. Oh man, I'm going to say like August or September of this year. So he was on it it's a 170-page book. So he was on it for a really long time.
Yeah. Does he do his own inks and coloring on it also?
Yeah, he does. And Marcus Anderson is his name. And he does everything digitally. And you know, I tried to be really mindful of the workload that I was placing on him. And also because this type of book we were doing and what the publisher expected from us is very text heavy. And I would say probably maybe 2 to 3 times more text than what you would find in anything other than a Alan Moore or a Chris Claremont book. So, and so I was always, you know, part of the job of the writer, at least my feeling is, you know, being aware of how many words are on the page, what that balance is going to look like, and making sure that in the script I let him know, like, hey, you know, this is going to be an easy page for you, and then it was a lot of pulling up references and reference material, and we worked really closely together, and honestly, it's one of the best working relationships I've ever had. I would love to work with him again.
That's cool. So your approach to this, did you kind of follow one specific person, or was it more of a general, like, different eras of as the party was forming and the work that they did, and, you know?
Yeah, it was, I knew going in that I was going to do a general, you know, like a historical overview, starting from the beginning when the party formed in 1966, to the time that it officially ended, which was, I want to say 82 or something like that. And I what I wanted more than anything, I went out, I got a bunch of books, textbooks, different autobiographies, biographies. I was reading them all, and I was making note of what I thought was missing. And one of the things that was missing in the broader context was like stuff that's easily accessible. And that's part of the point of doing a graphic novel is to make it easily accessible. There was some stuff in there that I wanted that I wasn't able to get as much of. Women played a huge part in the party, but there's very little written about them. And so I had originally my original outline had a much bigger section on women in the party, and I want to say it was going to be something like 20 pages I had dedicated according to the outline. And it just became increasingly clear that that 20 pages was too much. And so then it was like a question of, well, how many can I get? How many pages can I do here? Who can I get information on? And that was one of the more eye-opening experiences. And I was just talking to, I did an interview, I think it was with Publishers Weekly maybe, and we were talking about this, and I said that as a man, you don't necessarily, you can acknowledge sexism, you can acknowledge gender bias, you can work towards changing it, but even if you're aware of it, you're not really aware of it. It's there's so much that you can take for granted as a man. And this was like this wasn't even a slap in the face. This was like a kick in the balls and a punch in the head when I really got into this part of the story. And in fact, it was the last part of the book that I wrote, because I kept hoping I was going to find more. I was going to find more. I was going to find more. And the interesting thing was, as I'm rambling, I had the same problem when I did the Frederick Douglass book. And I wanted to have a bigger section about his wife, and there's nothing about her. And you start to realize, okay, so there's more than 100 years separating Frederick Douglass and the Black Panther Party, but the women in their lives, their history was almost not recorded at all. And so you see this, I began to see this huge problem. And that's one of those things that where I'm at now is like thinking, okay, how do I address that personally in my work? And then how do I, what can I do to change it on, not just on a personal level? Because it's like, yeah, sure, if I get to do a book about Harriet Tubman or Ida B. Wells, that's great, but that's just one book. How can I help open the door for others?
Do you think this might lead to someone writing, essentially the women of the Black Panther Party?
I hope so. I really do. And that's one of the things too, is like, okay, so who am I going to end up talking to a week from now or 2 weeks from now? What kind of opportunities are going to present themselves? And one of the things that I think is interesting is that like we're talking about something that happened 50 years ago, basically. So there's still members of the party that are alive, and so it's like there's somebody's parents or there's somebody's grandparents, and those stories are still waiting to be told. And so, I would encourage anybody who knows somebody who was in the party or knows somebody who knows somebody to sit down and talk to them and get that story, because there's so many that are waiting to be told. And it's not just the Black Panther Party. You could take any sort of socio-political movement. You could take any sort of artistic movement. You could take any of them, and like the stories are there, and especially within our more marginalized communities, them stories ain't being told.
Right. Yeah, definitely. What is what's your pie in the sky goal with this book? Because I ask you that because it's only been in the last few years that I personally, learned more about what really the history of the Black Panther Party. Because growing up, even granted, I grew up in a small town, a very right-leaning small town, but it probably wasn't until my late 20s when I started to realize that, the Black Panther Party wasn't just because you grew up in a small town, you're raised that they were another gang.
Yeah.
Like that is, and that's straight up the narrative you're taught.
Yeah.
That they had to be put down like any other gang that is out there. And over the years, I read more and more, and I'm like, wait a minute, they helped the Black community, but then they ended up helping, like, if you were poor, they were going to help you. They set up food kitchens. They set up, bank funds.
It was all, everything.
They invented the concept of the ambulance.
Yeah. And the free breakfast program, you name it. They did so much. Well, when you ask that question, Aaron, it's you're opening the door to my ego, right? You're opening the door to what I'd like the most. I honestly would love to see this book become as with the Frederick Douglass book, I know that it's been adopted in several school systems and it's in a lot of libraries. I'd like to see that happen. I'd like to see some coursework developed out of it, because as I was writing both of those books, my goal was to write something that could be, for lack of a better term, an entry level into the subject matter. and I know I'm a little bit older than all of you three, but when I was a kid, I was big into Classics Illustrated.
Yeah.
You could still get reprints of that stuff fairly inexpensively, and so I'm in fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, and to me, Classics Illustrated was really my introduction to especially American literature, but not just American literature, some British writers too. I mean, the first thing I ever read by Charles Dickens was the Tale of Two Cities comic book. So
right.
and I've never been one of those people who knocks the medium of comics, even when it's doing something like adapting, whether it's Herman Melville or Alexander Dumas or anything like that. I know what it did for me. And so I would like to think that maybe this will do that for other people. There's some great books about the Black Panther Party out there, but I ain't gonna lie, man, they ain't got no pictures in them. It's like I like a book with pictures. I love a book with pictures. And it's
I was the same way. Like I checked out Black Against Empire from the library.
Yeah,
and it's wonderfully written. I had to switch to the audio because my brain, especially when it's a more scholarly telling of a history, my brain's like, we can't do this, man. You got to give us something else to focus on while we're learning.
I just had that happen. I just started reading a book the other night that came out a few years ago, and I found myself skipping almost every other paragraph because every other paragraph was like and then as Lacan would say, this is very Freudian. I'm like, I don't care. Just, give me the fun stuff. So, and once in a while I like to get really in depth and deep, but I think that there's an entire generation of people, young people growing up, and there's older people too, that don't learn the more traditional ways that we're taught in school. And the thing I absolutely love about comics is that I just had somebody tell me the other day, I got an email from someone, their daughter is a remedial reader who doesn't read much, but just started reading comics and can't get enough comics. And I was like, of course, we all know this is something we know because we're a bunch of nerdlingers, but
right.
I have this love for the medium that the industry itself can't destroy, and I'd like to see more nonfiction graphic novels. I'd like to see getting into subject matters beyond just like biographies. There's nothing that you can't do in comics that won't be more entertaining because it's in comics, right? Even my comic book history of the Bible is more interesting than the Bible, So.
Well, you can get super graphic because the Bible's violent as hell.
Oh yeah. No.
You can cut loose on some of that on a comic book. So when does this come out? Can people pre-order it already, or?
Yeah, it can be pre-ordered. It's coming out January 19th, 2021, the day before Trump officially is kicked out of the White House. So I feel like that's like an awesome thing. And I know people who sent copies of the Frederick Douglass book to him. I doubt he read them. I'm sure he doesn't. Well, he must know how to read because, no, he could just be speaking into his.
Well, I mean, remember, he didn't know he was dead.
Yeah, that's true. I know. But so anyway, it comes out the day before Trump gets kicked out of the White House. And, I'm nervous for sure. I mean, there's still the beautiful thing about Frederick Douglass is, I shouldn't say beautiful, but yeah, he's been dead for like nearly 200 years. So I did hear from some of his like great grandchildren who loved the book, but Bobby Seale's still alive, and Kathleen Cleaver and Elaine Brown, and there's still a bunch of Panthers that are still alive who who knows how they're going to respond to this thing.
I mean, if you're lucky, I mean, they're going to love it, but even if they like realize like, no, you got this shit wrong,
yeah,
maybe instead of them just chewing you out, it's like an opportunity, like, all right, well, let's have the dialogue, let's write the follow-up book. If I got it wrong, tell us how it was.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because there was a huge rift that occurred in the party around 72 or 73, and it like when I say rift, that's putting it lightly, because people started dying. There was like a lot of, gunfights, and here we are 40 plus years later, almost 50 years later, and those rivalries are still there. I know from talking to people that are like, still like ready to throw down with somebody, but they're in an old folks home, so they can't.
And that's the basis of was it Black Messiah? The movie?
The movie that's coming out with I can't think of his name now. He was in Get Out, and
right.
Lakeith Stanfield was in it too. Yeah, Judas and the Black Messiah. Is originally when I had first talked about doing a Black Panther Party book, this was the story that I wanted to tell. Was the story that's in this movie, Judas and the Black Messiah, and my publisher at the time, or my editor, excuse me, was concerned that it was such a specific story that it would be very difficult for people to get into it and understand the complexities and the nuance of it. And I agreed to a certain extent. I also knew that, well, if I stuck to my guns on that particular subject, I wasn't going to get to do the book at all. So sure. I could include Fred Hampton and his story in it. And then if an opportunity comes up, I could always do something more complex and about him and his life and his murder. But I also know that my experience has taught me now that would have depressed the hell out of me. That's just like, that's a story where there really isn't a happy ending.
Right. Well, we've only got a few minutes left with you here, so maybe we wrap it up with a happy ending.
Okay.
Naomi's coming to TV, sir.
That's what they say.
You and this other writer that I think I've heard of. He does some of them funny books.
Mr. Bendis. Right. Mr. Bendis. Yeah.
That's what his students call him, right?
They call him Dr. Bendis. He demands that.
So demanding.
Some of the same people that I do, and there's a difference between something getting optioned, something going into development, and then something actually coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I look at someone like Greg Rucka, who it's been a pretty significant year and a half for him. He had the Stumptown TV show come out, he had the Old Guard movie come out. But I've known Greg for nearly 20 years, so I've seen how long some of this stuff has taken. And so as excited,
those overnight successes take decades.
Yeah. And so as excited as I am about the prospect of Naomi being a TV show on the CW, I also have to recognize the fact that, it may not happen. And I'm not trying to do the super cynical, oh, it's not going to happen, whatever, like, because we all know people like that poo-poo on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I feel like you've got to temper it with that, I guess, the more realistic outlook. And the fact of the matter is like, until I get a chunk of money that allows me to change my zip code, I ain't counting on nothing, man. It's like, you're going to still see me driving the same old Prius that's, in good shape, but it ain't perfect. And yeah. And I won't have a personal valet yet. As soon as I have that money, you'll know, because everywhere I go,
sure.
There'll be someone, they'll put my mask on for me.
That's right.
Take my mask off for me. All that. I'm going to be very much like Morris Day in The Time with Jerome. Someone's going to carry a mirror and everything.
Someone will pick up your killer burger for you. You won't have to go out and get it like a commoner.
I haven't eaten a killer burger in so long. I maybe I'll go get something to go. That's the thing. I hate to go. I hate getting food to go. I like to, because then I got to wash dishes and shit at home. You know what I'm saying? So
you mean you don't eat them out of the container, just like straight out of the packaging like an animal?
Well, see, I've gotten a little bit older, a little bit more sophisticated. No, I'm lying to you. I do straight out of the container.
I was like, God, how much older do I need to get out of that phase?
But I do. I just like, there's something, especially going to Killer Burger, where they're always blasting Van Halen and Motorhead, and I realize, like, I haven't been there in a year. I know I haven't been there since the new year, and like I miss my Killer Burger. I think I'm gonna go there tomorrow.
I think the last time I saw you in person, we grabbed lunch together at a Killer Burger.
It probably
like over
was
in Hollywood.
Yeah. Oh man, that's kind of it's all crazy. But I also think that there's I'm trying to find the opportunities that are presenting themselves, and I think in the comics industry we've had to think outside the box for a long time, but now we definitely need to think outside the box.
Yeah, what did they just release? That Kickstarter is now the biggest comic publisher ever.
Oh,
like the numbers they did in 2020 were like 8 billion, like an obscene amount of money for just comic projects.
And the thing too is like I'm diehard now. I'm a diehard Kickstarter proponent, and I know there's some problems with like more established publishers going to that well.
Sure.
But who was I talking to about this? I was talking to someone the other day, and I said, if you do a book through Image or Boom or any other publisher, and you move 1,000 units, that book is a failure, and you owe those people money. You go to Kickstarter and you move 400 units, you're doing okay. Marvel, their threshold for royalties has not changed in like God knows how long. I want to say you have to move something like, I want to say it's 80,000 units before you earn royalties on a comic, right? Well, I can tell you this is not an exaggeration. All the titles I wrote for Marvel, I've written one comic book for Marvel, one that I got royalties on, and that was the first issue of Power Man and Iron Fist, and that was because they did a variant for C2E2 for Reed Pop, and so Reed Pop bought so many units that it pushed us over into the royalty zone, but I've never gotten a royalty check ever for any comics that I've ever written. And it's like, and you start to realize, like, if you go to a smaller publisher, they're not going to give you a particularly good page rate, and you're fighting for shelf space and retailers, and I'm not saying Kickstarter is the only way to go, but it's pretty it's a pretty smart way to go if you go into it properly. And I think a big part of it is understanding that it actually is a community, that there's a community mindset to it, and it's not that different than, if I go to Emerald City Comic-Con, there's people who show up there who only buy stuff from me when I go to Emerald City. When I'm at WonderCon, there's people who only buy stuff from me at Anaheim. Well, we're not going there anymore. We're not doing those things for the time being. And, it's interesting to me because it's like, don't fight it. You got to lean into it. Otherwise we're all screwed,
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's some pretty good advice to end our little chat with, man.
Yeah. Well, no, thanks for having me. I know I talk too much, but that's
they put up with me. You don't talk too much.
Yes, you're fine.
I was gonna say, you asked me to be on here, man.
No, yes. It was really good to see you again. We got to have you on again. Hopefully, it'll be less than a year in a pandemic or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's good to see everybody. It's a very this is so weird, I'm like, oh, there's Cable. Look at him, and he's clean shaven. How? Why? What's the point? Or do you go out and you go to work, right?
I go to work. Okay. I'm still like everyone's been talking about. It's like, oh, quarantine this and quarantine that. I'm like, I have no idea what that was like at all, because I have been out every day regardless.
Well, I'm the lucky weirdo who got to leave their job and still make money for a couple months.
I was gonna say I got to leave job, but then I didn't get any more money.
Yep.
Well, I hope you all are doing well and hanging tough. So I will. I'll talk to you all in the new year. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you bet. Good. We'll link to the book and stuff when the show goes up. Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
nice.
Live long and prosper.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, man.
Take care. Yeah.
All right. Awkward sign-off stuff. That was cool to chat with him.
Indeed. It has been a year since I've seen him.
Yeah.
Like I see him online, but it's not the same thing.
I actually just realized that the last time I saw David Walker was the last time I went out to a thing, like to an event. I just bumped into him at the Crystal Ballroom.
Oh wow! All right.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
It was like the second to last thing I went to. I went to like one more small thing that same week, but like that was a concert where then the next stop was Seattle, and I think they actually ended up canceling it and the rest of the tour like later that same week. It was right on the cusp of just everything hitting the fan.
Yeah.
Easy.
So, what else should we roll into? We got double disco and double Mando, or we can nerd out for a bit about Chris Pine in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons.
See, and I heard this news, but someone said it was Chris Evans, so it's actually Chris Pine.
Chris Pine.
It's Chris Pine, and
Okay.
I'll drop the link in here. Variety is the one who shared it out.
I have a weird feeling that he's got a number of movie contracts with Paramount, or maybe just Paramount's the one who owns the rights to D&D, and who doesn't love Chris Pine? I mean, I think
People who don't understand what he actually brings to his roles. Like I think everyone's hung up on Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth, and they forget about Chris Pine.
Well, I saw people talking about how Chris Evans is the himbo of the MCU.
What the hell does that mean?
I'm pretty sure it's just like the male version of bimbo.
Yeah, but again, what does that mean? What is their criteria? Also, why are we still using the word bimbo?
I don't think I ever used the word
Seriously.
bimbo. I mean, not
Why
seriously.
are we using the word bimbo?
The word bimbo to me means bread, so I got
That's-
nothing. I can't explain it.
Is it bimbo?
Pan bimbo.
Huh?
Bimbo? Okay.
Pan bimbo. Which is basically Mexican Wonder Bread for anyone out there
Which
wondering.
means it's Wonder Bread, but with more sugar.
So
we're all gonna die of heart disease.
it's like
Not if the Beatus gets us first.
Hawaiian sweetbread.
Oh, nothing tops that.
Oh, no, it's not that sweet.
It's not that sweet.
It sounds like it's more like the big square, very specifically square loaves of thick sliced bread that you get in Japan too.
About to say it's a less eggy version of the square bread you get in Japan.
Okay,
Similar
so-
flavor, but
so-
the consistency is different because they use more eggs.
Okay, so Japanese more eggs, Mexicans more sugar.
Yeah, the sweet the sweetness level is kind of the same.
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Now I want to do an egg salad sandwich taste test with just all the different, all
the different
like the
breads.
top shelf mayo, the top shelf breads, and go and put it up against. I mean, Wonder Bread. It's the standards. Put up Wonder Bread, Bimbo, and then I don't know whatever bread. I'm sure there's multiple brands of the ones that they do in Japan.
Wow.
Sure.
Geek in the City has not done a taste test
We haven't.
in a number of years.
So I feel like the U.S. Well, okay, damn. Now here's where we get
Completely
people like really
hosts
mad at us.
These, yes.
Yeah. I feel like with Japan, you've got to use Kewpie mayo.
But if you're going to,
If you're testing the bread,
then everything else should be the same.
Oh, okay. Well, okay.
Mhm.
Mm,
Now, if
okay,
you want to
so-
just have fun and be like egg salad sandwich, American style, Japanese themed, not style, I would say, but like themed because of the ingredients, and then like a Mexican themed one.
Well, I've never had a Mexican themed egg salad sandwich unless by
yeah,
default, whatever I make is one, but I don't think like I'm gonna make this Mexican style.
Right. Well, it would be pan bimbo,
Yeah.
and what else? What else would make it more Mexican? Sriracha. You could put some sriracha or Tabasco in your egg salad mix.
See, I just felt
Valentina?
maybe
I don't know.
finely chopped jalapenos. Because I put that on my tuna salad
Sure.
all the time.
Um,
But then that requires that you allow something to go into the Japanese and the American one also. And
Right. And that's why like No, let's go back to the just like the bread challenge.
Okay, if we do the Mexican one, it's the mayo with the lime because that's kind of this. You never had that? Oh, man, look at that face. That face of disgust.
I look at mayonnaise as a necessary evil to begin with. Like I only use it as needed. I don't seek it out for pleasure. So the last thing I need is for you to start throwing in extra flavors in it. Like I actually hate salad dressing, like what's that brand?
Miracle Whip?
Miracle Whip, yeah. Miracle Whip is like even more gross and weird. I don't understand it.
I think Miracle Whip has a very specific demographic of the American populace that they get.
Yeah,
and that's
people from the South.
People, I think so.
The what?
The people from the South.
It's big in the South.
Yeah.
That's what I've come to understand.
Because everything in the South is sweet. Everything.
Yep.
Just like what's that joke? Well, how sweet is a sweet tea? Till it's sweet enough. That's.
Oh yeah. There's like a trick to it though. It's not just about a bunch of sugar. You have to temper it in and.
Yeah.
No, but Miracle Whip isn't sweet. It's like tangy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Almost as though it were like mayonnaise with lime in it.
No, that's different.
I don't know what the tang in Miracle Whip is. I don't care for it though. Not a fan of the Miracle Whip.
The tang in
so
Miracle
Norm
Whip
says,
is like what happens if you mix bread and butter pickle juice to mayonnaise.
Ugh.
I mean, look, it's all semantics because the Japanese egg salad is going to win. The only one that's going to come close is an American one made with Duke's mayo. Like that's the only one that's going to put up a fighting chance.
Yeah, because egg salad is going to use Kewpie mayonnaise. You're right.
Yeah.
Trying to think of what specifically they would put in it.
While you're thinking about that, Norm is recommending for the Mexican themed egg salad sandwich jalapenos, cilantro, cotija cheese.
Yeah, but then we have to allow the Japanese and the American one to add stuff to theirs too.
Right. I'm just sharing that.
Yeah, I know, I get it. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that there would be one specific ingredient that would be like you make the American one, you make all of the egg salad similarly, but the American one also has chopped up sweet pickles. And the Mexican one has jalapenos, and for fuck's sake, what would be in the Japanese one?
I think it would have to do more with texture than with flavor.
Yeah. I'm like the easy route is you would sprinkle in some oh man,
just about to say it.
Futomaki. Yeah.
Futomaki.
I put that on.
No, not
already.
Furokake. Furokake.
Yeah.
There it is.
I have 3 different flavors of that because they have different styles now.
Oh yeah.
By the way, that shit is gold on a hot dog.
Yep.
I need to get some. I don't have any.
The furikake and then
on a tuna salad.
Yeah, that would be good. I think the furikake that we have has freeze-dried salmon bits in it.
Ooh.
How did Chris Pine inspire a conversation about egg salad sandwiches? Oh, mayonnaise.
Himbo.
Egg
salad sandwiches.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well,
Chris Pine, D&D movie.
Yes. So Variety released.
You guys chat. I have to go refresh my drink.
Damn
by
it,
refresh, I mean get my very first one.
So here's the bummer: is the article or whatever you want to call it that released this information really doesn't actually say that much about it. It just says that he's in negotiations with Paramount to star in a D&D adaptation, and it mentions the people who are going to be like helming this. They're best known, apparently, according to Variety, they're best known for their movie Game Night.
Which has less to do with games than anything else.
It's a rom-com, isn't it?
Yes.
I just assumed. It's Rachel McAdams and Jason Bateman.
It's a rom-com / black comedy. Because the whole concept of their game night is it's usurped by an actual crime that they are somehow involved in that they think is part of an extreme game night that they're playing, They're playing like an immersive crime game.
Gotcha. I mean, in
Now,
that case,
I haven't watched it. I'm based solely on the trailers that I've seen.
I mean, in that case, Issa Rae and is it Hari Kondabolu? No. What is his name? Kumail Nanjiani. Issa Rae and Kumail Nanjiani did a rom-com that gets where the situation gets sort of overthrown by a crime. So if you want to watch a movie about that, that's probably a better recommendation.
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name of the movie now.
Lovebirds.
Yes.
Thank you. I forgot I didn't actually see the title. We're being derailed again by just comments about this movie, this Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Which, like, this comes back down to, like, okay, great, you've announced Chris Pine, but you're not addressing the elephant in the room, which is, what the hell is your D&D movie about? How the hell do you make a D&D movie about anything? Because D&D is about everything.
Yeah, so I feel like I know they tried that live action one, 15 years ago, and it's bad. It's so bad.
Yeah.
You guys. The Hollywood Reporter explains, plot details are being kept under the chainmail.
God damn it. And you know what?
Hollywood Reporter, you're fired.
Yeah, reporters quit
trying. Fucking fired.
I gave up on trying to find anything about this news.
Remember how long it took news reporters to not write Biff Bam Pow whenever they wrote about comics?
No, I don't, because they still do it.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I don't read those ones anymore.
It's never stopped. It is never stopped.
So I feel like you could go a couple routes with a D&D movie. I think the one that would be hardest to pull off, man, it'd be so hard, but I feel like you could do some weird kind of meta thing that shows how the fantasy escapism and storytelling and exploring character within yourself helps you in the real world. You know, it helps, people that maybe don't feel like they can be social anywhere else, but on the gaming table, they just come alive. There's something to be done with that. That's not an easy script. And it requires everyone to be in on, this is what we're trying to do, because it becomes parody really quickly. It becomes lightning bolt, like way too easily.
I think a really good example of how you can do that would be Kieran Gillen's Die.
Yeah, that's an idea.
The attraction of the story is the fantasy realm, but the real story is that outer foil about how these hardships and all this trauma has messed up these people. They might have been just regular kids when it all started, but now they're these dysfunctional adults.
Yeah.
Well, and that actually is, I think, the modern equivalent of what I was going to suggest, which is, you don't do a movie, you do a television series, and you adapt the D&D cartoon from the 80s. Because that's what Die is. Die is a grown-up version of that.
It's what happened to them afterwards.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's kids getting, like the premise of the television show is they get on a ride to go in Dungeons and Dragons. Who the hell would make a dark ride of Dungeons and Dragons?
Seriously, the one thing I found the least plausible with that whole cartoon wasn't the realm of Dungeons and Dragons, but was that someone in the real world invested money to make a D&D roller coaster.
It was a dark ride. It was a dark ride, though, not a roller coaster.
That's true.
What exactly is a dark ride?
A dark ride is you're in a car that's on a track, and it rolls through a big, giant, dark building that has pop-ups.
Technically, Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, Mr. Toad, those are all dark rides.
That one in Enchanted Village where you shoot the everything.
The Challenge of Mordor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I did not know that those were called that.
That's what it's called. Look up the history of dark rides if you ever want to fall down a very fun rabbit hole. Because you will discover that one person was responsible for like 70% of the dark rides in North America.
No
Ooh,
kidding. Ooh,
fascinating.
I'm definitely going to dump down that rabbit hole.
And that he got that gig basically because he was doing parade floats and windows for Macy's. And someone went, "Hey, can you build this?" He's like, "I don't see why I couldn't."
That's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree, Cable. That would be a really fun way to go about it. Or
because then it gives you six regular characters, an antagonist, the weird old dude that gives you information, weekly adventures, people can learn things.
Tiamat.
Yep.
Oh man, if they ended every episode with an actual PSA also.
I was thinking a movie series a la Hobbit of the Lord of the Rings. But a series would allow for a lot more fleshing out. It's such a huge universe.
I think if you do movies, then you have to have a different set of characters. And then if you do a movie series, then it's, Dungeons and Dragons, Descent into Avernus, and that campaign. Dungeons and Dragons, The Rime of Icewind Dale. Like it has to be.
Can you make that? Can you make a campaign be one movie effectively?
Probably.
Yeah,
but it would be 3 hours long.
That's the thing I would bring up next. But that requires like a pretty sizable investment from the studio to say, like, we're going to do 3 movies. By the way, each one's going to have different characters every single time because we're going to adapt the most popular D&D campaigns of all time and turn them into movies. You can't really turn some of the more popular books, as I'm assuming there would be other rights involved. Like, you couldn't do a Drist movie because you probably have to deal with Salvatore in some way. You can't do Dragonlance for similar reasons. Yeah. I mean, I don't know who owns what, but
you could 100% do Waterdeep, the Dragon Heist. That's your D&D heist movie.
Well, that's not more than that. That's fantasy meets Ocean's 11. That could be a fucking blast if you do it right.
But then the problem that you run up against in trying to get investors and a studio on board with this is letting them know it's like, if we screw this up, every D&D nerd out there, and there are a lot of them because D&D is more popular than it has ever been, will crucify you. And you will get negative reviews before the movie's even out, and it'll kill your box office.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you have more in the pipe. It'll be dead on arrival. And I think even if you get everything right, you're still going to run into, that wasn't how I ran my campaign. I did something better.
You never make everyone happy.
Yep.
Not with this. I mean, like, that's a general truth, but very specifically when you're talking about making D&D live action anything.
But if you do enough to get the spirit of it right, and then contain the right amount of elements to get everyone who's never played D&D before into that theater, then you win. But that's a huge gamble.
Yeah, as long as you're honest with the spirit too, and you throw the long-term fans a couple of shout outs in terms of visual things or
if you want to do it in a way that you make sure that you get a lot of D&D fans on board from the get-go, your first film is you adapt the campaign that
the Critical Role folks,
you do Wild Mind, you do Critical Role. Yeah. You do that group.
And I would suggest, even if you don't do that, you definitely talk to those folks about being in your writer's room.
Oh, yeah.
And on your production team.
Yep.
It's like why it took the movie industry like 20 years to realize, like, hey, we want to do these comic book movies. Maybe we should actually hire the people that have been telling these stories for decades to help us out. And
there are a lot more people in Hollywood that are doing D&D, like that are bigger names that actually have clout that could do something with it. Like, Deborah Ann Woll is big in D&D.
Right.
And does a lot of the celebrity D&D stuff as well as her own private D&D stuff.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, wait, I know her from Daredevil and True Blood. And
I'm sorry, fans, but you may have to leave Vin Diesel out of this one. I like the guy, but let's not let him He can show up.
Sure.
He already got to do his D&D movie. Literally, he got to do Witchfighter.
Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't he do that one? Yeah.
That literally based on his campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Which, look, not a good movie, but I kind of give it to. I got to give it to an artist who's like, you know what? I'm gonna turn my campaign into a movie. You know what? Good for you. Go for it.
Dame Judi Dench.
That's what I was just thinking. It was Judy.
Bring her in. Definitely Joe Manganiello.
Yeah.
Who's the guy that we've been talking about recently? Lillard. Bring in Matthew Lillard.
Oh, Matthew Lillard. I don't know if he likes to act anymore.
Who says anything about asking? Put him in the writer room. Put him in the producer's chair. Put him behind the camera.
No, you're right. That's a good idea.
Like if he directed that, if Matthew Lillard directed a D&D movie, I would go watch it.
Yes. And get folks like Keith Baker to help you out on the world. Like, if you're not going to base it on an established setting, bring in someone like Keith Baker to be like, we need you help. We need you to help us create an air of authenticity to what we are making.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't be like, let's just hire some fantasy folks to do that nerd shit. Like, don't do that.
But people
That's what the first D&D movie did, and it shows.
Whoever's in Hollywood would have to know to reach out to these people. I would also pay money to watch a Dungeons and Dragons Eberron movie.
Hell yeah!
And
see Eberron. I would want to. Eberron, I want as a show.
Oh yeah, but like give Keith Baker some of that sweet consultant money, because he'll just take it and use it to fund more games that he decides he wants to make.
Yeah. Also, I know a podcast with 3 hosts that would be really good consultants on it too.
Well, at least 2 really good consultants. I'm all right.
Shh, you have your strengths.
I would have said you 2 are probably the better of the 3.
No,
you're an active player in D&D.
You guys discredit yourself way too much.
I'm an active player, but I don't have that like DM brain, and I also just don't have that like all around just like game mechanics. I mean, I not to say that game mechanics are necessarily that important when you're converting to live action, you know, whatever, but just understanding games and rules and mechanics is important, and Cable definitely beats me in that category.
And I am trying to deprogram myself from the constant male reaction of like, oh, sure, I can totally do that thing because I'm a dude. It's like, right, no, I should know what my actual skill set is and where it is applicable and where it is helpful.
As the woman, I'm like, no, that's fine. You're probably better at that than me.
And I'm the one's like, let's just all do it. Woo!
That would be fine.
You're definitely the Pollyanna of the 3 of us.
Oh, that's the nicest things anyone said to me in a long time. Pollyannas, that's good, right? That's not, I mean,
it means that they're a positive kind of silver lining.
I was trying to think like sometimes Pollyanna is used as an insult, and I refuse to accept it this time.
Pollyanna is used as an insult by people who have no soul and are their only personality and character trait is that they're a cynic, and so that is not a personality trait.
And I'm not a cynic; I'm a misanthrope.
That's true. No, I almost said somebody else's name, and I would have had to have bleeped it.
Don't do that.
No, we're not getting into this.
Would have had to have bleeped it.
No. But what if we instead got into what do we call it? Star trekking?
Star talking.
Star talking.
Star talking.
So we don't have 2 episodes of Mando to talk about. We just have 1. No, that's right. We didn't talk about anything last week except we just rambled on and on with Nat.
Nat, yeah. So we've got 2 Mando and 2 Disco.
Oh, I think
Mando Disco.
I think we just stick with the 2 episodes of Mando because last week's episode of Disco was part 1 of a 2-parter. So
right, and we'll talk about it next week. Yeah, because I think next week is Greg and Lindsay.
Yeah, and we can all talk about that stuff. Are they going to talk about D&D next week?
Well,
maybe they're either going to do another archetype, or if we've done them all, which I think we might have finished that. Then we're just going to do the deep dive into Tasha's.
Oh, you're right. That's what we were going to do. I think we were going to talk Tasha's.
By the
We
way,
should
Bean, have
probably
you
confirm.
been reading it more?
I've been skimming through it, but
Isn't it just so pretty looking?
it's the art is amazing.
Yeah, that and I think the two best books they put out this year has been Icewind Dale and Tasha. Those two books are gorgeous.
I'm really glad that I made the effort to get my hands on the variant cover.
Yeah.
Thanks, Guardian Games.
You're welcome. It wasn't Guardian. I mean, it was Guardian Games. It was me.
I still need to write Guardian Games. The year's almost over.
Yes, you do. Please do that.
Numbers are hard to get.
I do give you the sole credit for that, Cable, but I also do not want to imply to all of our listeners that they should contact you directly if they, are trying to get a hold of something difficult to get.
I can't. Well, I can't make that magic happen all the time for everybody. I can say that, and you can just add this with the plug for Guardian Games this week. If you are a gamer and you've heard about something and it's coming out and it's months ahead, talk to your friendly local game store and make a special order so that you end up on a list before it gets announced and before it sells out.
Yes.
This goes also for comic book shops, game stores, and any specialized retailer. Please go into your friendly local comic shop, game store, what have you, and let them know ahead of time that you are interested in a thing. Here's why. If the store is going to buy 12 of a thing, not knowing that there are 18 people who are interested in it or 24 people who are interested in it, they're just going to buy the 12. But if those 24 people come in and go, hey, I heard this is coming out in 3 months, I want that. Then instead of buying 12, we buy 48 because clearly we want to get that 24 for those people. And then we go, well, this is going to be bigger than we thought it was. And we buy an additional so that we have stuff on the shelf for other people to discover it. And then we have special orders that are already taken care of. That means you come in and yours is already taken care of.
Yep. Similar thing happens with comic books. The kind of the rule that used to be, unless it's a big release you think is going to be huge, it was always pull boxes plus 5. That was kind of what I was always told to do. How many subscribers we got? Well, we got 23. All right, then I'm ordering 28. Every once in a while, I was like, well, you'll get a deal if you do a round number and they'll kick in a variant. All right, I'm doing 30. So
yeah, but the level of interest indicates a sample size of what projected sales are expected to be. So for every one person that says, hey, are you going to have this? That's probably a total of 5 people who are actually interested and will want to buy it.
Like I know that after the second week of so many people calling in and going, hey, there's this new D book called Tasha's coming out, and I think they're going to have a special cover. I want to get it. Like after the second week of that, of getting like 2 or 3 people a day doing that, our buyer went, oh, okay, I'm now going to max out our allocations at every single distributor that I have that I can get this book at.
Yeah. Because
I want to be the store that has all of them.
Didn't you say like this is one of the best-selling books they've done? Like the numbers were like crazy on it, or is it the variants? Or
we sold out of we had 100 of each cover, and we sold out of them within the first 24 hours.
Why do you think that is? Is it something about the book itself, or just the current environment?
It's the book. It's both. It's a lot of things. Like one, D&D books seem to be an evergreen thing that sell. It's why we have moved them to the front of the store so that when people go in, like, I'm looking for D&D. Oh, it's right there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's like stocked appropriately. Like there's at least 5 of every book on the shelves at all time. Starter kits, all of that. It's people are stuck inside because of the pandemic, so they do a lot of reading. Like the book sales have increased greatly because that's like, hey, I may not be able to play this with my friends, but I'm going to study up and start working on stuff for when we can campaign again. Like there's a lot of that going on.
And also a well-written source
doing
book
the same
is actually
thing.
enjoyable to read.
Yes.
You know.
But one wouldn't know that until they had read it. So
right. But with Tasha's, it was the content. And Aaron has spoken about this before. The content of Tasha's was such that it was full of information that longtime D&D players went, ooh, I remember these characters. I remember this information. Now they finally updated it for 5e. I totally need that for all. And it's designed not only for dungeon masters, but also players.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the books that come out are designed for the DM. Like the one book that everyone gets is the player's handbook.
Yeah.
And then that's it. The DM has to buy all the other books because they're campaign settings or their guides or their, tomes of monsters, et cetera, et cetera. This was for both. This was both DMs and players.
That's probably the biggest contributor then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for me personally, part of it, I was reading some of the content that I knew was going to come down the pipe. But like a Cable had mentioned, I've been playing D&D since I was 12 years old. And everyone who played D&D that long, like we know Mordenkainen and Elminster. We know like the big guns of wizards, as it were, I guess.
Volo.
But we also all knew Tasha by the spells, and simply because it still is, but then was even such a more so male-dominated industry. No one wrote about women. So Tasha was all this like, who the fuck is this Tasha? She has these weird ass spells. Every once in a while in the fiction, they mention her in passing. And it's always like Elminster will mention like, well, there was that one time when we had to team up with Tasha, and I don't want to talk about how that went down. She was always like written as this person that if she got involved, you were in deep shit, either because you needed her help or she was coming after you. So the character itself had this mystique. So when they said, hey, we're putting a book out by her, I was like, yay, and it doesn't disappoint. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah. So there it is. Yes.
Very good. Back to Mandalorian.
Back to a galaxy far, far away. So what were the past two? It was the...
Last week's episode was we really didn't talk about this on the show. Last week's 2 weeks ago was the return of
the tragedy.
The tragedy.
Yeah, that's it.
And the return of Boba Fett
mm-hmm.
to canon as the actual badass that we have been told that he was for decades.
Finally.
And then last
week
we
talked about this hanging out, so I'm confusing. I was like, yeah, we did. Like, no, wait, that was just us goofing off.
Yep. And then last week was The Believer, which was the redemption of Bill Burr's Mayfield character, which I didn't see coming at all.
I didn't see
me
coming
neither.
Oh my God. Well, okay. Should we touch on the tragedy first?
Let's talk about the let's do high points for the tragedy. What was your high point?
For me personally, action scenes were beautifully shot. It was Robert Rodriguez. Which, by the way, seeing Robert Rodriguez do Star Wars, that was pretty dope.
Can't wait for him to do more.
I never look ahead at who has directed something, and so
I didn't either.
That was like a fun little. Oh, by the way, at the end with that episode.
Well, there was like some camera work that, like, my old film nerd brain was like, this feels familiar. Wait, that jumping through the air shooting, that feels familiar too.
Mm-hmm.
And then the name comes up. It's like, oh shit! It's because this is El Mariachi in space. Yes.
For me, the highlight was really just. Tamora Morrison was awesome, but he could have been anybody and acted those scenes, and it would have been amazing. The thing that makes it resonate with me is that. And I know this has been all over the internet, but Boba Fett finally got to be a badass on screen. Like now there's some actual legitimacy to his hype.
Yes.
And that's been a point of contention for me for many years. So that was what's the word?
It was some nerd shit.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was, not gratifying. But,
gratifying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I do like that. Pardon me, Morrison. Like he must have spoken to Rodriguez and the stunt coordinator. His fighting was intentionally made to look like Maori fighters, and even the gaffy stick. That was apparently one of his ideas, that Boba Fett would keep the gaffy stick. He wouldn't just go back to his guns. And that was apparently one of Morrison's calls because it reminded him of some of the weapons that his ancestors would have used. And he's like, nope, gonna do it. Like, I waited for him to break out into a haka when that shit was over.
He had lots of faces during that fight scene where he was without his armor that felt very much like they were close to haka faces.
Yeah, I had heard that they built some of the Stormtrooper armor out of sugar glass, so that you could see it just getting fucking pummeled, that was pretty
shattered
righteous.
everywhere.
Yes, he messed those guys up.
Yeah,
I think my favorite article that I read about that was, and I mean favorite by I mocked it, because they were talking about the fact that they didn't do any close-up shots of the who was under the helmet. It's like, because it probably would have freaked Boba Fett out after, breaking off that helmet and seeing his own face. It's like, those are stormtroopers, not clone troopers. You don't actually know what you're talking about.
yeah, you're not.
It's like you're writing a Star Wars article. Yeah, it's like,
really,
stormtroopers
that was
are
there?
not clone. Yeah, it's like the stormtroopers are not clones. Like,
that's like some of the laziest writing ever.
Yes, it was. That's why I mocked it.
Wow.
See, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, I think
I'll nerd shame so-called professionals that don't know their shit.
There is so much that I loved about the episode, but I think that at the end of the day, my favorite takeaway is the fact that not only was it the return of Boba Fett, but it was the fact that these two characters that they reintroduced, both of them, were Fennec Shand and Boba Fett, this is an Asian American and Pacific Islander teamed up together on screen, and it's like that I want more of this in my Star Wars.
To help another brown person save the green baby.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
I'm gonna pour one out for the poor Razor Crest. Like, he just got it fixed up.
Oh my god.
Yes.
There was a lot of shouting in my house when that happened.
There's apparently a huge amount of backlash. Like, you can't see it. It's on a higher shelf. But my Razor, the Lego Razor Crest, apparently people have been angrily canceling their orders for the Lego Razor Crest set and for any toys. Presumably because they weren't buying it because they enjoy a thing. They were buying it so they could resell it.
Oh, now it's not worth money because you blew it up.
That doesn't even make sense. It still existed. It's still part of the canon. It's still a cool ship.
Yeah, mine's full of Mandalorians. Like, I have other Mandalorian figures inside of the Razor Crest with
that would be the same as if
Din Djarin.
people didn't want their bombers. So, we've got the episode. What is that episode? Is it 8 or 7?
TIE bombers, or the Resistance bombers.
The Resistance bombers.
That's the Last Jedi. Well, people don't want anything to do with the Last Jedi because they didn't want to be told that the best Jedi is a woman and anyone can be a Jedi. You don't have to be a Skywalker.
But that would be like Star Trek fans like having to like. Well, now I can't enjoy my Enterprise toys because they blow that fucker up like every third movie these days.
Yep.
Like, you know what? I got a shelf of ships that have been blown up.
Broke your
It's a lot of
ships.
things that people shouldn't want. Whatever.
This is one of the problems of capitalism.
Yes, it ruins my Star Wars.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Although I will admit, I was more emotionally bummed out. Like, I knew I had a good idea the child was going to get kidnapped eventually.
Oh, yeah.
But losing the Razor Crest, I was like, oh no.
Yeah, that hurt more.
Yeah.
I like that he was still able to salvage the control knob.
Yeah.
And the Beskar spear. That's going to get stuck somewhere that's not going to be pretty.
I hope that just goes through Gideon's fucking heart. Just shank.
See, I used to up until all of the announcements from Disney last week.
Yeah.
I would have put money that they were going to kill Gideon at the end of this season so that they could bring on Thrawn for season 3. But with the announcements, I'm like, I don't think that's where they're going. I think Thrawn is going to be the big bad background character for Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and Rangers of the New Republic.
Yeah.
So
simultaneously?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's going to be their emperor. Essentially, it'll be so that they can combine all 3 shows and do Heir to the Empire. Their own version of Heir to the Empire.
Yeah, the only thing that really bums me out is that we know what happens with the 3 movies that come up. On a meta level, we know that Thrawn does not prevent a big enough threat that gets the Republic. I mean, maybe not. Who knows?
No, but maybe everything that he does is what gives rise to the First Order.
It's possible, and also it's established by The Force Awakens that the Republic forces Leia to shut down the military. She's essentially an outlaw in The Force Awakens. The Republic has no standing military. It's her little resistance.
Yep.
Anyway, I can see
Thrawn
being like...
still do a lot, and you can, I don't know if retcon is the right term for it, but, there's that whole arc towards the end of Clone Wars where they establish that, where they flesh out how the clones came to be in existence in the first place. And I think it only barely gets mentioned in the movies, if at all.
Yeah. Plus, I could also see Thrawn kind of helping to restart, creates the First Order, whatever. And then right before Force Awakens, he has this realization like, you assholes are going back to this Force thing, aren't you? I did all of Thrawn out. He just goes back to Chiss, like, eat my blue. Wah. I don't think Thrawn would say that, but
it would be a hard heel turn. But I would like to see an old Thrawn switch sides. But that
would be a face turn then.
Face turn. Thank you.
Sorry.
He's just such a hardcore believer in everything that the Emperor is doing.
Is he?
That's how he's depicted in Rebels. Like he is doing everything for the glory of his Emperor. Like he has a disdain for almost everyone that works underneath him, but he considers all of them pawns, every single one of them.
Yeah. We'll see. I'm excited.
I don't have enough context to really opine on that, but the way you're describing it sounds to me more like sort of anything to get ahead, less than it seems like a true believer, even if he thinks that everyone else who is in the same boat as him is less than.
At the time of Rebels, there are like 3 people that outrank Thrawn, and that is the Emperor, Darth Vader, and Grand Moff Tarkin. Those are the only 3 people that outrank Grand Admiral Thrawn.
And Vader's questionable.
Right.
They get up in each other's grills a lot.
Yep. There is still, but the only place to move up to is Tarkin's role.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he already has plans on how that would happen anyway.
Yeah.
Like he's not going to replace Darth Vader because he doesn't understand Darth Vader, because it's also proven that if you want to screw up any of Thrawn's plans, throw a Force user at him, because he does not understand or believe in the Force. And it blindsides him every single time.
Does he think it's a government hoax?
No, he actually does believe in the Force. He thinks they rely on it too much. Because he talks about his own people have these kids that this is cheesy, called Skywalkers, that allow their ships to... Just space is very dangerous to navigate, and they basically have Force users that are navigation.
But is this in the books or is this in Rebels?
Yeah, it's in the books.
See, and that's the trick, is we have to solely go on his depiction in Rebels.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah.
His depiction in Rebels is he understands that the Force is real, but doesn't understand it. It's why Ezra can get the best of him despite all of Thrawn's best laid plans, because he will come out of left field with the curveball. He's like, how was I supposed to know this even existed?
Right.
How? I don't get this.
The other thing that's kind of cool that's hinted at with Thrawn and why he's so loyal to the Emperor is that it's been hinted at for a long time now that Thrawn has seen what's coming and the whole galaxy is not ready for it. He tried to convince his own government to prepare and they exiled him for it. And he saw basically the power that the Emperor was building and was like, well, all right, gonna help this guy get stronger because he's the only one who's ready for what's coming. There's always been kind of this vague reason behind why he does it. Because Thrawn knows that Palpatine hates aliens. Hates non-humans.
I was going to say, they're all alien.
They're all, yeah.
But non-humans. He does not like non-humanoid races.
How about we go from speaking about characters that have racist intentions to the redemption of Bill Burr's character?
Yep.
Wait, I have 2 questions before we move on to that next episode.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I read something about how the so when Grogu is on the magic stone and all that force energy is happening around him, that there were these blue butterflies, and that's I mean, obviously I saw that, but what I read was that is somehow some sort of an Easter egg linking to Ezra Bridger. Did that catch anyone else's attention? Because it's not one I picked up on.
First, that's not what an Easter egg is. I hate the misuse of that term now. It's an allusion to, but I don't know how it alludes to Ezra.
Okay. I wasn't clear on that either. That's why I was curious.
Do you know, Aaron?
I'm reading a little bit here, and apparently a lot of this is coming from CBR, who used to be a good comic book site, but now they're not. I forgot. That's right. So Marvel has had that series, The Dark Lord of the Sith, and there's a scene when Vader is also manifesting and contacting through the Force. He also has weird blue butterflies that show up around him.
So maybe it's not a direct link to Ezra, but it's just some sort of
it might be a
thing.
It might be a Force thing.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
And then the other thing that I noticed that I was kind of curious about, and you guys might not really have an answer for this, but so Moff Gideon, he's pretty up there. The only other Moff I've ever known of in the Star Wars universe is Tarkin. In the movies, he's Grand Moff Tarkin. Tarkin only ever presents in his military style uniform, his Empire, regime garb, but Gideon wears body armor almost somewhat akin to Darth Vader. What's that about?
Well, I always read that as Gideon was a pilot at one time because his chest plate looks like a modified version of a TIE fighter pilot.
Yes, it does.
But that's just something that you've sort of gleaned. It's not like
necessarily
canon.
He might just be comfortable wearing armor.
Like even Thrawn has similar trooper armor pieces that he wears when he goes, and as well as a helmet when he actually enters a field of battle. The rest of the time he's in military gear. Moff Gideon, just like Aaron's talking about, prefers to wear it, or always just sees himself as, I am always ready to enter the field of battle.
Yeah. He considers himself a wartime Moff.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Like they would make if they gave someone a planet to take over, that gave them the rank of governor. Moff was a system.
Sectors. There's only according to the official start, there's only 20 Moffs at any given time. They are a limited number, and only the Emperor can appoint a Moff.
Gotcha.
And Tarkin rules all of them. A Grand Admiral is over Moffs, but not over Tarkin.
So what? Admiral, Moff, Grand Admiral, Grand Moff?
Yeah.
Cool.
It was always kind of written that the Empire only had like 2 or 3 Grand Admirals in its entire existence, so that granted, they're not the best written, but they're still fun, and they're part of the Legend series. But in the Heir of the Empire trilogy, like the mere mention that a Grand Admiral had come back made systems surrender. Like, whoa, no, the New Republic's way too far away, and there's a Grand Moff like on it. We surrender. Like, nope, it's all good. Yeah, it's like hearing that John Wick is coming for you.
John Wick.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
So anyway, on to Bill Burr.
Yeah. Fucking hey, man. First off, might have one of my favorite jokes in all of Star Wars ever when they're talking about trying to sneak in, and Boba Fett says, "There's a problem with them recognizing my face." So good. So good. Yeah, I did not expect it to be as emotionally resonant as it wound up being.
Mm-hmm. For what seemed like it was just going to be a fill-in episode to like, okay, we have to get this character on because he's got info. It's just going to be a filler episode unless they're going to go immediately to take on Moff Gideon, which they didn't.
Yeah.
It's like that was strange, but it was very, very good.
It was really good.
Super unexpected.
And this was Rick Famuyiwa, who's one of the original 6 directors from season 1. He directed the second episode with the Sandcrawler and the Mudhorn.
Yes.
And then he directed the Prison Break episode, which introduced Mayfield.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
And he was hired specifically by Favreau because he does a lot of low budget indie film where it's like, yep, cut, print, we got to go. The cops are here type of like filmmaking. Like it's shoestring budget and you just get everything is dirty and gritty.
Yeah.
And he's like that. I want that guy to make Star Wars movies.
It was funny that they actually interviewed the director and he mentioned his first few days on the set were tricky because he would take 1 or 2 takes. He's like, all right, let's move on. And they're like, you sure you don't want to get one more for cover? And he apparently was like, is that in the budget? And they're like, oh, right. We forgot. You work for Disney now. Yeah, it's in the budget, man. He's like, oh, well then, yeah, let's go ahead and do this shot too.
But I can imagine where the reason they wanted him or someone with that style of background is because he probably is really good at giving director notes prior to actually taking the shoots and like really establishing the characters, motivation, their inner thought processes. He wants the actors to sort of dive into that character and like really kind of tune in to the emotions and like what's going on inside, so that because with a lower budget, you all the focus is in the acting and the emotion and the writing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Totally.
And that played that paid off.
Yeah.
Easy for you to say.
I'm running out of brain steam, I think.
It's all right. Someone has a job again that's taking all of her powers from her.
Yeah.
I've been sapped.
I think I mentioned this when we were chatting casually that I likened it to this was an Apocalypse Now meeting Colonel Kurtz moment.
Yeah.
With Bill Burr, with Mayfield, and except he actually got to do something about it.
Right.
Which we got to see where he picked up so many of these attitudes and then realized I've been following the wrong thing this whole time. I know what I believe about the universe, but the universe has just given me a chance to write something that I felt was a goal, like a huge injustice.
Yeah.
And he took it.
Go ahead. Sorry.
It's that revelation that someone has when, their whole life is about them and their needs and the probably also the people in their immediate vicinity. They go to work and they find their pleasure, wherever that is for them. And that's sort of it. Their whole world is them and their job and their immediate family and friends. And then when you suddenly realize that there's so much more happening all around you, it's probably right in fucking front of you. You just have to stop and care about anything else for just a little bit, just for a moment. And then you're like, oh shit, I've been contributing to this problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's the meta message in that episode, which is we are currently in a country where there are a lot of people that have chosen the empire.
Yeah.
And within the next year, they're going to be going, oh, good God, what did I do?
Well, I hope.
I certainly fucking hope so, yeah.
I think even if it's 10%, that's heartening because it means that we haven't lost these people. And I think that was the message of hope. Again, getting back to the whole point of Star Wars is to give messages of hope. Like the very first episode we were introduced to was called A New Hope. In that Mayfield's character, which we knew, he uses some racist language a lot.
Yeah. I mean, they even acknowledge it when he says, and by you people, I do mean you people.
Yes.
Like in that episode, they do it.
And they have that line that that Twi'lek related slur that he uses in his first episode. It's in the recap of the previous events.
To give that and to have him be put in the place of like, you're right, this is wrong, and now I can do something about it, and now I'm going to do something about it. And I think that having Din being able to not only just be a witness to that, but give him space to do that. He never let up on him. He's like, I'm still going to challenge you the entire time. It's like, because you and I are not alike.
Yeah.
And then he saw a change and went, okay, I'm going to give you space to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, because Mando, I mean, it's the helmet removal. And I love at the end, he's like, I never saw your face.
Yep.
When only half an hour, I don't know how long those events were supposed to have taken, but it was just a little bit earlier that day. He's like, what's the fucking difference, dude? You're wearing a helmet now, aren't you?
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It had, like we all said, it had way more emotional depth than you would expect in this episode.
Yep.
Which is essentially like a quick little side mission to get to the end boss kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's side quest. The series has been the whole theme of this
That's true.
season of Mando.
I
will help you get to where
also
you're going. You must do this thing for me.
Right.
It's like, fine.
Yeah.
So Norm brings up something that is actually a really good segue. Is do we think that Mando taking his helmet off in that room full of people is him starting to replace his principles for his love of the child? Little sweet.
Not hit. Well,
it directly ties into Bill Burr's dialogue in the truck, where he basically says you are going to find reasons to. It's like at some point you're going to do this or do that or violate your code.
You're going to find a justification.
Yeah, because something is more important, and that was the proof of, okay, the child, Grogu is more important to Din than his creed.
Yeah.
I'm almost surprised at myself for not catching it sooner or expecting that to happen, because that in retrospect they lay it on kind of thick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we start to see it a lot in this season, especially the one with Ahsoka, when he's so excited when Grogu uses the Force. He's like, yeah. And even, was it the next episode? Every time he looks down and says, Grogu, he giggles. He goes, he
loves it.
Yeah. And then he flat out says it at the end of this last episode when he goes all fucking President Rosalind on Moff Gideon with that hollow message, which is basically that green child means more to me than anything else in the galaxy. I am coming for you. And I literally thought of Rosalind's speech when she thinks Adama's been executed at the end of Battlestar. When she's like, I will come for all of you. Like when she's like, I will burn this fleet down to get you.
I appreciate that they reran in the opening Moff Gideon's speech, because that was the entirety of what Din said back to him.
Yeah.
Which left Gideon with that face of, I may have miscalculated.
Right.
I didn't
Horribly.
make that connection. I better watch it again.
Yeah, he gives him the same speech that Gideon gave the three of them when they were trapped in the cantina.
Right. After they fucking just butchered Werner Herzog. It's all right.
So all that to say, yes, Norm, we do think that.
Yes, that was a long way to say yes. Well, I think that's a good way to wrap up the show.
Agreed.
Done a solid 90 here. Big thanks to David Walker for hanging out for a little bit.
It was lovely to see him.
Hopefully he's showering right now. So yeah, next week we'll have Edelyn and Greg on for building character, and then probably do some discovery. We'll probably cover the 2-parter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming there will be much to talk about then.
You know what my theory is. You don't
and also
like it, but
it'll be
my theory is.
I don't know. We have to talk when we stop recording. I don't remember.
Yeah.
And also next week will be our last Mandalorian review, or until December of next year.
We'll have a lot more Star Wars to talk about before then, I'm sure.
Oh, that's right.
They only announced 10 different shows and movies. How could there be more?
And then
we don't cover Marvel shit. We'd have even more stuff.
Woof, that would just be the whole show.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bean. I'm sorry about that.
I was gonna say, just a reminder that the last Tuesday of the month is also going to be our Geek in the City New Year's party.
Yeah, we got to think how we're going to do that. Like, do we allow more people to hang out? Do we send out limited? The last time we just posted our code up there, we got,
we
Nazis.
never want to do that again.
Why don't we like make it a limited thing for, people we know, probably local people, maybe a couple fans who listeners, I should say, who tune in, who we know tune in live.
Yeah, we've had some long time chatters that could probably hang out with us.
Yeah. And then
also you have to dress up.
Yes, we are dressing fancy. We're gonna have some
or as
bubbly
fancy as you
something.
can. Cable's gonna be getting off of work, so he may not want to.
That's true.
I still, I'm like, you will also be getting off of work, presumably.
Yeah, but I only work until 4. I have a weird schedule.
But, I mean, Cable, just put on a hat and whatever you drink, keep your pinky up. Like, that's all you have to do.
Oh, also, I don't work that day.
So.
It's the end of the year.
She's not retail anymore.
I work for a tiny
retail.
little, business, not retail business. And if I can avoid it, I'll never do that shit again.
Cable, just tie a bow on your pinky so when you drink, it's just a fancy sip.
Woo-hoo!
Well, now I'm just going to have to dress up just because.
And the irony being, he's going to look better than all of us.
Yeah, probably. Let's say, do any of your Lego figures have a little top hat? Put a little tiny top hat on your finger.
I probably got it here in my bin full of hats.
Over here, my haunted house has the guy who runs the haunted house has the top hat.
Mm-hmm. See, if I get that, I'm gonna have to build a little Lego Baron von Gulo.
And Manuel.
I have a Manuel already.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I built my Disney train to go around my Christmas tree.
Nice.
Ooh.
All right. Well, with that, I'm Aaron Duran.
I'm Bean Arita.
And I'm Cable Hashitani.
And we will talk to everybody next week. We'll talk to everybody next week.